Okay, right, so I'm doing 3 on the trot, so it's probably going to be a bit of a mistake, but because it's late, I'm tired, and technically I've had 2 shots already, and I'm not very good with my drink. Says the person that's doing a dram of whiskey a day. But this particular one is Jefferson small batch. Now the bottle doesn't look like this, but when I did a Google search of Jefferson's small batch, the only Google image searches I could find were for Jefferson's very small batch. So that's what I'm putting up. The small batch I'm hoping is not too dissimilar, and all of Jefferson's bottlings seem to be fairly similar in style. Now Jefferson's, and I should also point out, this was very kindly donated by my mate John Pitts. Thank you, John. Cheers, buddy. So, what have I done with me? 2 seconds, because I've just lost me. Left me jigger by the sink. Whoops. Right. So, Jefferson's. Where was I? Anyway, launched in 1997 by a guy called Trey Zeller. Whether he's any relation to Fuzzy Zeller, the golfer, I've no idea. And his father, Chet. Now, Trey was a born and bred Kentuckian, and Chet was actually a historian of bourbon. And they formed a company that they called McLean and Kine. Now, this was actually named after the Zellers' kind of family ancestry, who had history in moonshining back in the sort of 17th and 18th century. So it was basically kind of, the company was named after elder relatives of their family names. Now, the reason it's named Jefferson's, the brand officially states that Trey Zeller chose the ex-president Jefferson due to Jefferson's curiosity, his experimental spirit, and his good taste. Now, in a separate interview, he's actually been quoted as saying that he had very little marketing budget, if any whatsoever, and he basically picked Jefferson because he needed a name and a face that was recognisable and actually had some kind of reputation and air of quality. So it really was literally kind of Jefferson, everybody knows him, everybody knows what it looks like, it sounds like it's got heritage, we'll use it. So it's almost like somebody, 20, 30 years from now, or maybe even a bit longer, bringing up a whiskey that's named after Michael Jordan, or somebody that doesn't have the dodgy backstory of a lot of kind of famous people. Okay, so it turns out that my iPad had filled up its storage and hadn't told me, and basically stopped recording. But the whole thing cut out after 8 minutes, and I thought, well, that's not too bad. I can put a little bit on the end going, batteries run out, storage has run out, but I've pretty much said all I needed to say. But having gone through the doing the editing, it turns out that I've only got the first 3 minutes, and the actual tasting of it is completely missing. So sorry about that, people. This is the remainder of it. I'm not going to do it because I need to crack on, and it's I'm not going to do it. But basically, I'd spoken about the name, the reason behind it being called Jefferson's. They don't actually have a distillery. There is no Jefferson's distillery. What Trey Zeller is doing is buying stock from various distilleries, including, I've just read about, some stock from old Rip Van Winkle, the old, now infamous Stitzel Weller distillery. So apparently, if you're looking for Pappy Van Winkle, if you can get hold of Jefferson's Presidential, like an early version, it's probably worth digging around for it. There's like a particular batch of Presidential bourbon from Jefferson's that is essentially Pappy Van Winkle, so it's not as massively expensive as the Van Winkle itself has. Van Winkle I will be getting to soon, fortunately. It's not a Pappy, but it is a Van Winkle. So the Jefferson small batch was 60% corn, 30% rye, 10% barley. It's aged for between 6 to 10 years, but they are buying it from another distillery. Now what I found with this one, and I should be able to show you this now because I've done the Woodenville that same night, and that's the colour of the Woodenville, and this is the colour of the Jefferson. So you can see it's quite quite lighter, and there was a real sort of gentle. There wasn't so much bourbon characters in this. It was kind of Scotchy, to be perfectly honest. Not from what I can get out of the tiny little bottle. There was a very, very gentle smokiness. It was really, really pleasant, but to be perfectly honest, if I'd have tried it blind, I wouldn't have picked it as bourbon. I would have picked it as a Scotch, something like either a lowland with the lightness to it, like a slightly peated, slightly smoky. It wasn't like a medicinal peatiness, it was a very soft, gentle, very, very subtle kind of peppery smokiness, and there was salt and pepper on there as well. There was kind of a sea salty freshness to it. It was really, really good, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't what I was expecting from a bourbon whiskey. It was sort of for bourbon drinkers that want to move into Scotch, or for Scotch drinkers that want to move into bourbon. It was that kind of crossover. It had very, very subtle classical bourbon elements, but quite subtle Scotch feels. And like I say, trying it blind, I would have picked it as a Scotch rather than a bourbon. Dram A whiskies are selling it for about 37 quid. Can't remember if I mentioned that in the first bit that actually got recorded, but 37 quid, to be perfectly honest, is a pretty decent price, particularly in the UK. I think it's about $30 in the US if you can find it. It's worth giving it a go. I'd be really interested to see what some of the others are like, and sort of the aged at sea sounds interesting. This is one where they're quite experimental, and the Jefferson's, I think it's aged at sea or ocean aged or something like that they call it now. Essentially they put it on a boat and they send it out to sea for 6 months and comes back, and the agitation of the waves and the whiskey inside the cask with the movement of the boat supposedly increases maturation because it's interacting with the wood more rather than just sitting stable. So it was a very interesting whiskey, very Scotchy rather than bourbony, but worth checking out if you like bourbon but you're looking for something a little bit different and a little bit more unusual, or if you're a bourbon drinker and you want to try and move into Scotch, then give it a go. So yes, John Pitts, thanks for the donation. Apologies for the technical mishap and not actually being able to do the tasting live. It did happen. That's all that's left. And I do have a little bit with the empty glass in, but I'm not going to bother sticking it on the end of this. I literally did 20 seconds afterwards going, oh well, I've said what I needed to say, so cheers, I'll see you in the next one. So yeah, so that's that with Jefferson's. So cheers, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.